today we will be talking about narcissistic mothers. We got a set of videos all lined up to go through, so let's get cracking on this. I hope that everybody enjoys this as much as me.
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics.
No, there's that.
Hi, it's Dr. Fox.
There we go.
And in this video, I want to talk about narcissistic mothers. And I know that this can be a sensitive topic for a lot of individuals, but I think that it's important that we go over it. And I think going over these various behaviors, tactics, and the impact that it may have had on you is really important. And I know that a lot of times daughters or sons of narcissistic mothers often wonder, am I doing that to my kids? Is this something that I'm engaging in? Or how it impact your relationships? We're going to talk about that in this video, absolutely. So hang out with me, let's unpack it, and let's get into it. And like, share, and subscribe, and comment, and here we go. So common narcissistic mother behaviors and tactics. Now, these include a lack of empathy, and they don't care or they feel indifferent to pain and suffering of their child. It just doesn't seem to move them. They don't seem to have this discomfort while seeing their child suffer, particularly if that child's suffering makes the mother look good. Or
yes, both the daughter and myself have gone through this with our mothers. My mother was a recovering alcoholic, but yet she went to AA for the source instead of, going to the family. That was.
She was recovering for like 22 years.
Yeah, recovering for 22 years.
Yep.
So, I mean, I know quite a bit about this already. We always have done research on these things to try to get better understanding. So.
You did a video on the demon-attached person.
Yes, I had done a video on the demon-attached person, so please check it out.
It's a similar trait.
Very similar.
It's pretty much the same thing. Demon-attached person is basically a narcissistic person suffering from narcissistic personality disorder.
If you have something to say, please say it in the live chat. I have it open, so I will see everything, or try to.
validate some of that mother's feelings, then the mother absolutely just doesn't have any empathy and they don't really connect with it in any way, shape, or form. And they also have this constant need for admiration. So you have to be sure to praise, thank, and acknowledge her every chance you get. And any success that you have to attribute it to her and her treatment of you and how she influenced your perspective and your view and all of these different factors. So you have to constantly give that admiration and praise. Oh, it's because of you I did this. And, thanks, Mom.
Yes, for some reason, with the generation before us, which is what? The baby boomers, right?
I think so,
Yeah, the baby boomers seems to be very, very pinpoint on this. It seems like a lot of mothers are narcissistic within that time period, for whatever reason. Going back to their mothers, not getting enough attention. I don't know what it is, but
They're selfish and they're really greedy, and it's like, this is mine.
and especially with money, they don't want to save it. They always want to be like, well, it's mine. I'm just gonna spend it. I'm gonna get what I want. That seems to happen an awful lot.
Because of you, I was able to do that, this and that. There's also this tendency to belittle or manipulate her children as well. And this is, everybody fails and struggles, right? So it's because of your personal imperfections and issues that all of us have. Those are seen as character flaws. They're not related to her. They're related to you. So you have that psychological distance of any problems or issues, which all of us have as we're developing. But she says, that's your character flaw. This is just like your father. This is why you're broken, or this is why you can't do that, or this is why you're not successful, or this is why that person broke up with you, whatever it is. And they take this opportunity again to belittle you or even manipulate you, but they do that also because, and it's this narcissistic process.
Yes, this happens a lot. They have to be better than you, and they have to know more. It's like, they want to use you as a drone to fulfill what they want to do. That's what it seems. Any more to add on this stutter button? I know you're very It burst in the snow.
where they think that if I make you feel broken enough or failed enough, then that means that I'm smart enough to recognize it, and you should see that I have all the right answers, right? Now, there's also a high tendency to neglect your needs, right, as you're growing up, and that you sort of internalize this sense that your needs are secondary. They're just not that important because her needs are primary. And she doesn't communicate her needs. You're supposed to sense them. You're supposed to be able to figure out what those are as they change. You're supposed to be able to read them and understand them over time. Now, a lot of children of narcissistic parents are able to sort of sense that and pick that up because there's this constant vigilance that if I'm not constantly aware of your needs and all these other factors, then everything will just fall apart. Then I'm a huge failure. So your success equates to my sense of self-esteem. And your success, and a lot of narcissists have this internal sense of fear, shame, doubt, inferiority. So it's always changing. So it's so fickle. So you're always trying.
Yeah, it's very much you're going along and trying to live their life. You do not have your own life because you're too afraid to let them down. That is what they end up doing to you.
To keep up, and it's so hard to do that, and you feel this constant pressure to always be reading her and her environment to make sure that she's okay, even though your needs have been neglected and you've learned.
It was like the story that I told you about how I was raised to be strong and independent and don't depend on a man, make sure that it's your choice, your money.
Yep.
And then we get together and I say that I want to that you're not going to really work, you're just going to stay behind and work on the ranch and take care of the animals, and I was going to make the money. And then she's looking at me like, well, that's all wrong. I mean, how are you going to let him do that? And it was like never brought up. It was like she never told me that the men are supposed to be the ones making the money or anything. She told me I was the one supposed to be making the money. We're supposed to be equal. Women are actually supposed to be better, and so it was like that. It was always changing. It was always changing to fit her narrative. Just like, how she started dating Greg and acting the way that, she never did when I was growing up. She adapted to her group of people that she was hanging out with.
Exactly. And I mean, look, at that time, she was hanging around with Tawny.
Yeah.
Because Tawny was at her work.
Yeah.
And we all know how she is.
Talking behind people's backs, setting people up, causing problems, causing drama. Oh, I'm not going to tell anybody, and then run off to tell somebody,
Exactly. But yes, it's that crazy. Back to the show.
Over time to allow your needs to be secondary. Narcissistic mothers are also overly controlling and critical. You never do things right. And if they did work out, it's not because you did it. It's because you got lucky, right? Because shaming you, again, it goes back to see how smart I am and how great I am, that I'm powerful enough to shame you. But it's also that you didn't follow her directions 100%.
I didn't do
Had
it.
you done exactly what I told you to do, and they don't, by the way, they tell you only pieces, and very broken, cryptic pieces typically, so you have to put them together, because if they told you exactly what to do, then that would add to their sense of responsibility, so they never do that. So then you have to put this puzzle together about what has to be done, and then if it works.
Yeah, how often did that happen with you? The cryptic, not knowing, but having to piece it together.
It's like, well, you better figure it out. It's like, if you have to ask, then you'll never know, that sort of thing.
Yes.
And like sneering at me and with the raised eyebrows, thinking, well, okay, well, let's see if you make the right choice. And always changing. First it was okay that we were together, and then it wasn't. And then it was like, oh, it's okay that you started driving the van and saying that it was your van, but then no, it's my van, let's not get it twisted. It's like,
whatever
is it okay or
to
is
fit
it not?
her narrative.
Right, and I would do something that she would say was wrong and then buy me something a few hours later. So I always took that as an apology for her saying that she was wrong, because she never said that she was wrong. And like I said, I remember one time that she gave me an apology, and it was over the phone. One time in all of my life that she gave me an apology.
That's crazy.
And it was at that moment that I think that she realized that she could use you as the scapegoat. Because she was like, well, I was really actually frustrated with him because he doesn't have any responsibility. Because she dared try to tell me that I didn't show any responsibility when I was taking care of the house and the animals.
No matter what you were Yeah.
Out, well, that's because she told you to do it. But if it doesn't, that's because you're broken and you're a failure. And another common control tactic that a lot of narcissistic mothers use is guilt or conditional love to maintain that control.
This
So
is like a
if you
malignant
don't
one.
do
Yeah.
this,
When
she won't
not
talk to you
liking
again.
mothers.
Silent treatment is often a
guilt.
very
Yeah.
common
A lot of guilt
punitive
with you.
measure that they engage in. Now, if you don't give her enough of A, B, or C, she'll again go back into the silent
tried to
treatment,
guilt
or
you.
she'll enlist
Yeah.
others
Yeah.
to see you as bad, broken, this horrible kid, or
choice.
whatever it may be. And then now you have a crowd or a group
Yeah,
of
the guilt
individuals
is
like,
the
yeah,
signature.
Billy or
Yes.
Barbara should have done such and such, such and such. And I can't believe she didn't do that, even though that's not the whole story, right? Because the story has been largely skewed so that she looks safe. She wasn't a part of the failure or the error, whatever it was, but you look like you're the number one 100% cause of it. It's like, oh my God. And it's this constant pressure that a lot of these sons and daughters of narcissistic mothers experience and they internalize. And it really builds into their sense of self, their concept of self. And this leads to this wonderment a lot of times that these kids start to wonder, I mean, so I'm lacking in love, so then when I face rejection, and all of us face rejection, but for these particular individuals, when you face rejection, it's because you are not good enough. It's because you've been rejected because of the
Yes.
level of failure that you are. And it becomes this internalized pattern and belief that adds to behaviors that continue to cause problems and difficulties in your life. And I think to really have a good perspective, we got to look at, okay, so how do narcissistic mothers and the relationship that you have with her, how does it impact you and who you are? So if you are unaware of these tactics and issues,
Yes, and a lot of times you don't know. It takes a long time to truly know that you're being manipulated, that you're being played.
It was like 30.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that was like really harsh, you know.
And it's like these mothers have no.
You know, and the sick thing is that she used to tell me, we would get into these arguments and I would be like screaming, yelling, crying, and say, I was like, I just try to make you proud. Why can't you do that? And it was like, she would look me in the eyes and she says, you are never going to get that from me. And she's like, you know why? You know, because of, you know, my grandfather and my grandmother and everything. She would look me in the eyes and tell me that I was never going to get that kind of approval from her.
Yeah.
And I would just chalk it up to like, well, she's having a bad day. People say things. And she was truthful there.
Yeah.
But just cruel. You know, just so cruel.
Very
Like I
much
said,
so.
this video seems to be more about the malignant narcissist.
Yeah.
I found one. I'm not entirely sure. From what I saw of it, it sounds more like your mother and my grandmother. It's called the vulnerable narcissistic
Okay, yeah,
mother.
the next one we have is the 10 signs. That should be a good one.
Okay, yeah,
To
and
go
then try,
over.
I want to definitely try to go over that one as well, the vulnerable one.
Okay.
Because I've never really heard that one, but yeah, it sounds kind of like my grandmother or your mother would say, oh gosh, there's nobody there to help me, you know, all this stuff's happened to me and now you're leaving me too, you know, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
For sure.
But this right here, you know, this manipulative evilness is definitely my mother.
Yes.
so you have likely internalized many of these expectations and you likely play them out in close and romantic relationships over and over and over again. And the way these can manifest is you don't stick up for yourself. You blame yourself first without assessing the situation objectively. You intensely desire connection, but there's never enough connection, so you don't feel truly close to someone because there's always that distance, like, is this real?
No, I didn't
Can
want
I really
that.
count on this? Because you were taught over time that any real connection isn't really connection at all, that you're used to and comfortable with. And comfortable doesn't mean good, it just means what you're used to. So that comfortable connection is really one that isn't really healthy. It's not really adaptive. It tends to be
None of it's
maladaptive.
really
And
healthy.
it wears away at your own sense of self. And individuals with narcissistic mothers also develop this intense codependency. It's this need to be needed. That's the definition of codependency. It's the need to be needed. So I constantly need to be needed to validate who I am, where I
I've had
am,
that
and
for
what
sure.
I'm doing.
I
And
was jumping in.
these codependent
few
relationships, they
people.
play out
Yep.
over and over and over again. So
Talk to
you
them
don't
about
decide the pace of your relationship. Your partner does. You don't decide if
And
there's
you were
success or
thinking.
failure in your
Yeah.
relationship.
Whereas I was
Your partner
deciding.
does, because you need that. And that sense of validation,
That's just the two
external
different
validation
types
from that
of
person, gives you
the
an
way our mothers lived
internalized
out.
sense of validation that everything is okay. But there's always that voice. And I call it with my clients family in the head. I got that from Lauren Smith Benjamin. She's wonderful, amazing researcher into personality disorders. And she talks about this family in the head, right? So we internalize mom. So it's mom's voice telling us how we're never good enough, how we'll never get there, and you'll never truly be loved because you're broken and defective. And that's one of those ways. Another is that you have this deep-seated depression, but it has this unclear origin. Like you're not really sure how it got here, but I've always had it. I've always felt this way. So I've always
Like I had that all the time too, and even when I would bring it up, she's like, "Well, why are you depressed? You have animals, you have money, you have everything that you want. You can go and buy food out and all this. If you have everything, why are you depressed? You don't have the right to be depressed." I got
Yeah.
that from both my mother and my fucking grandmother. My language, you know.
Yes.
But yeah, it is. It's like, and you really can't pinpoint why you're depressed. And I didn't even think about it until animal control was here to take away those horses.
Yeah.
And I told him, well, I've been depressed, you know, and then they laughed at me and said, well, that's not an excuse. And then at that moment, it's like, that is the only excuse. That is the only
Yes.
reason that this could have happened, that this stuff could have gone under. And I would, because I,
We're back on, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. We had a slight hiccup here.
we had flyover from jets. Sometimes that interferes.
Let me check here. I'm going to make sure that I got the stream here.
But yeah, anyway, the sense of depression.
Yes.
And I know that you've struggled with depression. You just manifest it in a different way. And I can never get out of you why you feel that way either. So it's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
You just
It's
can't quite
just
pinpoint it
a depression.
because they put you into it psychologically so often. We don't know which way is up. Depression. Because they put you into it psychologically
Okay.
so often.
We're back up. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Alrighty.
All right. Let's get back to our. Is that?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
felt second. I've never felt important. And this concept of joy is often one that is so distant and almost inconceivable. But that sadness, you feel it, and you feel it like inside. It's this intensive sorrow, this repetitive and ongoing sense of sorrow that was actually put in there and nurtured by all of those narcissistic tactics, behaviors, belittling, shaming, so on and so forth, that you experienced by that narcissistic parent, that narcissistic mother. And you have this intense self-doubt about your ability to make decisions and to trust in yourself. And that goes to what I talked about, that codependency, always looking to someone else, to get this connection with someone else, to validate who you are. But it's never enough validation, or it's not a trusted validation. So you're constantly wondering, worrying, and feeling unbalanced in your relationship. And it does cause a lot of questioning about self, others, relationships. And it may not just be romantic relationships. It can also be in parental relationships as well. Now, if you have a narcissistic mother, we're going through, it's like, yeah, I have that. Well, how do you deal with that narcissistic mother? I think the first step, you have to radically accept who she is. Now, I didn't say what, but who she is. And we have to challenge this internalized idea of the mother you want, or you even may need, and see the mother you have. And this can be really hard, right? All of us have this idea of good mother, this caring, compassionate person who's going to help us, nurture us, and care for us. And what I see in a lot of my clients that have narcissistic mothers or parents, that they're always trying to reach that level. And what the really sophisticated narcissistic parents have done, they've created this really ill-defined, nebulous bar for you to reach. But you can't quite get there because it's not quite defined, so you're always kind of like, yeah, I guess, and I think so. If I do this, this is good, but then you'll love me for this, but then why isn't she like this? And you internalize that, and it creates a lot of internal confusion and a lot of self-doubt. And that's where we have to radically accept who she is. It doesn't mean you don't love her. It means that you recognize who she is and what her tactics are. And I think that that creates an ability for you to set boundaries. And you have to create and maintain those healthy boundaries. You don't deserve to be shamed. You don't deserve to be belittled. And you don't deserve to be manipulated. And I think that you have to have those boundaries in place. Arguing with her is not going to do it. You're not going to argue with her enough that she's suddenly going to be like, wait a minute, I need to be this object or idea of good mother, because that's just not going to happen. So we just, again, have to radically accept who they are and then set those good boundaries. Also, you got to stay calm. Whew, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. And I know that that's a tough one. You got to try not.
I think it was harder for me to just like not think that I couldn't change that, because I've been raised to condition and train animals, and so it's like with repetition enough, usually the animal will accept it and it'll become part of its conditioning and it will just be. So I think that's why I tried for so long and like argued so hotly and so fiercely, because I thought that like there was a chance to recondition the thinking.
Yeah, for sure.
She taught me that.
Yeah.
You know, so that was difficult, but then realizing that it's literally just like a different type of brain chemistry and a different type of wiring that they have.
Yes.
They're not like animals. They're worse. You know, they don't have the ability to learn a new condition.
And like we've had to do, I mean, unfortunately, it comes down to it sometimes. You just have to cut those ties.
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of the comments were saying that it's like so many people are going like no contact with their mothers because of this.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
See, that's what I mean. This generation, for some reason, there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. So I don't know if it was something in the food in those times.
It did start coming out with more processed foods because it was just post-war, you know, like
Yeah.
it was the 1950s for most of them. So it was post-war. They had a lot of, they came up with a lot of innovative packaging and stuff and freeze-dried foods for the soldiers and everything during that time. So they were like, oh, why don't we just carry this over, because it was super convenient and like how much cheaper it was. Why haven't we been doing this all along? So yeah, there's probably a good component to that. And then don't forget that many of the births of our family came around the time when they were doing those sleeping births.
Yeah.
My mother was one of those.
You went over that, yes.
Yeah, so it was like, it seemed like it was a nice, calm, easy way to give birth because you were supposed to be asleep. But it was like ambient, and they had no idea what those women were doing. They were screaming, yelling, getting up on the bed, throwing fecal matter and everything, and had no memory of it because it was basically like ambient.
Yeah.
You know, so they don't remember that trauma, but there was definitely a primal trauma in that. And then they take the babies away, and they don't get to see them for like 3 days, you know, so it's like, yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it too.
Yes.
Go ahead.
React emotionally to what she says, even if it's an insult. You keep your cool, because when you lose your cool, then she turns it on you, right? See how disrespectful you are to your mother. See how terrible you are to your mother. And I've recently been rewatching The Sopranos, and Tony Soprano's mother is this narcissistic mother, absolutely through and through. It's a really good example of all of these tactics and manipulations and dangling of love to try to get them to pull closer. But then whenever they make a mistake or there's an error, she actually laughs when Tony falls at one point, or all these different factors. And just about how corrosive she is to Tony and his sisters and their sense of self, that they just wear away at them. But underneath, they're aspiring for this love and connection. Part of them, I think, believes that they'll never actually get it. And lastly, it's good to plan your responses, right? So you've been with your mom long enough. You have a good idea of what she's like. You hopefully see her tactics, and if not, just sit back and pay attention. You'll learn a lot from her. And by maintaining your cool and trying to be objective, you'll learn more about manipulation tactics. You'll learn more about the shaming procedures. You'll learn more about the belittling that she engages in. And just remember that have a respectful exit strategy when the conversation goes off the rails. What are you going to say? So things start to go south, and say, you know, I think we're done for today. You know, or thanks, Mom, I'm going to have to catch up with you later. Take care. Bye. Because remember, you're not going to argue the narcissism.
Yes, that is probably one of the best points, is not to argue and just let it be. It's the hardest thing for most people to do, but it is the most effective one. They don't like that. They like the argumentative. They like having power over your emotions.
Yeah, totally ruled with that one because you don't react ever to anything. So
It's fine.
one thing that you had up on me because I have a fucking way fiery temper when it comes to this.
Yes.
Out of her. You're not going to argue with her enough to where she starts to take responsibility and do things differently. Now, is there a chance of that? Absolutely. There are no absolutes in the world. Is there a chance that something happens, she finally realizes that, oh man, I've been this narcissistic mother, I need to change? Sure. I can tell you in over 2 decades of working with individuals who have been parents, partners, so on and so forth, of narcissistic mothers or partners, things like that, we haven't really hit that level. Now, I've had individuals who were narcissists or who were along the narcissistic spectrum who came to me for treatment and they said, I think I'm a narcissist. What can I do about it? And a lot of times they didn't have these ingrained traits, these ingrained aspects or manipulative behaviors that were so almost habitual. They just fell into these strategies and behaviors. Instead, something happened. Usually it was them. A lot of times it's been a health scare where they realized, wow, you know, I had this health scare and no one came to look after me. Nobody seemed to care. And I wonder why that is. And we start to unpack these things. Or they incur what's called a narcissistic wound, which certainly the health scare can be that. No one comes to look after them. That can be that narcissistic wound. Or something else in business or in their own love life or something like that. And then they may decide to change, but you are not going to make them change. You're not going to be able to make someone else change. You have to recognize who they are, keep your cool, understand what their behaviors are, and have that planned response that if things start to go off the rails, say, you know, I appreciate that. I think I'm going to step out for today. And she may egg you on to engage because that may be what she's looking for. But maintain your own sense of composure, your own sense of power and control. And that will help you see things clearly and manage things better. And I know sometimes it's going to hurt because, you know, the relationship with our parents, we want it to be this particular idea, but we may not have it. And they're people too, and we have to accept who they are. And that's hard to do. I appreciate your time and attention. I hope this was helpful. And please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
All right, we're going to go on to the 10 signs.
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can look at the signs of a mother with vulnerable narcissistic traits.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So I've looked at narcissism from the grandiose side, but this is from the vulnerable side, and this is specifically in the context of a mother-son relationship. So I answer this question by looking at the 10 signs of a mother with vulnerable narcissistic traits, and these will focus on narcissistic behaviors that would be directly observable by the son. So I've talked about narcissism a number of times, so I'm just going to briefly go over the construct to illustrate the differences between grandiose and vulnerable. So with narcissism, we see there's a tendency to be self-centered, a sense of entitlement, a need for admiration, and a low score on agreeableness, like one of the big 5 traits, agreeableness. We see that grandiose narcissism has characteristics like arrogance, being self-confident, having superficial charm, being callous, unemotional, having externalized anger, and being resistant to criticism. Vulnerable narcissism is quite a bit different. It still has those common elements, but it has other elements like being resentful, having distrust for people, having a lot of shame, being defensive, unforgiving, having internalized anger, and being hypersensitive to criticism. So as we can see, grandiose narcissism is quite a bit different than vulnerable, and vulnerable looks a little bit like borderline personality pathology. And some of those commonalities will be reflected in these signs. So now moving to the 10 signs. When I use the term mother, I'm referring to the mother with vulnerable narcissistic traits. It's just easier to say mother. So starting with sign number 1. The mother recognizes that there may be some areas that she needs to change. This is a vague recognition. She doesn't really understand the nature of narcissism. She believes that the way she's been treated by other people is primarily responsible.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, my mother, it was alcoholism that I think got her mostly into the narcissist range. So let's continue this and see where it goes.
For her negative feelings. We refer to this as an external locus of control. So she believes that her emotions are controlled by other people. She doesn't believe that she can change internally. She's likely to have comorbid conditions like depression and anxiety, and this is because of the high neuroticism. Now we see that neuroticism is positively correlated to vulnerable narcissism. It's actually the trait in the Big Five model that has the strongest connection to vulnerable narcissism. It's somewhat likely due to this vague recognition the mother has that she has received some form of mental health counseling, but not for narcissism, but rather for the related conditions, again, like depression and anxiety.
Yep.
Moving to sign number 2. Arguments start because the mother believes that she is a victim. Now, the mother would not be
All the
typically
time.
dramatic or emotionally expressive, but more passive-aggressive in nature. She can continue the argument for days, weeks, or months, and this really stresses the importance of boundaries. Sometimes it's better just to walk away from an argument and not invest any energy in it. Primarily, she will direct her anger internally, so she will suffer quite a bit when she has arguments with her son. Just because the anger is primarily directed internally doesn't mean that there's no externalized anger. It's just a bit more subtle than compared to grandiose narcissism. But the son won't have much of a problem detecting it because the mother will keep increasing the expression of anger until the son picks up on it, right? So it starts at a low level, again, kind of subtle, and she'll just keep moving until she gets the reaction that she's looking for. Moving to sign number 3. The mother is unforgiving. This is what I refer to as the dark cloud of vulnerable narcissism. The son didn't have to do anything wrong for the mother to be upset with him, but if he does do something wrong, it's held against him forever. She ends up in this cycle where she says that she forgives the son, but then she brings up whatever the action was again so that she can gain leverage. In a way, the bad acts of the son are like an investment to the mother. They pay dividends to her on a regular basis, so she doesn't really want to give them up. It's one thing to give up, say, $100 and spend it on something, to give it as a gift. It's another thing to give up $100 worth of stock shares that might pay dividends for many years to come. Again, that's how she kind of thinks of it. Whatever the son has done that's bad, this counterbalances the mother's bad acts, at least in her mind. Sign number 4, the mother is relatively good at picking up deception in other people. This is due to the neuroticism, specifically the high level of negative emotions. Vulnerable narcissists pay attention to social and environmental cues, where somebody is looking, how they are dressed, what type of expression they have on their face. They do this because they're looking for threats. But this vigilance, combined with the high level of negative emotions, actually makes the mother fairly effective at figuring out when somebody's lying. Grandiose narcissists are not good at this. What does this mean for the son? If he wants to deceive the mother, like to get out of doing something, like if he makes an excuse for not going over to her house when she wanted him to go over, there's a good chance she's going to pick up on that lie. And that eventually is going to turn into an argument. Sign number 5. The mother believes that her status as the mother entitles her to being the only important person in the son's life. She doesn't view the relationship as something that needs development or resources put into it. For her, it's automatic. She's entitled to it. She deserves it. Again, without doing anything to earn it on a regular basis. That status belongs to her. She's particularly offended if the son enters into a long-term romantic relationship and starts to invest in that relationship with this partner. And really, any relationship that takes time away from the mother would be something that catches her attention. Sign number 6, the mother is vindictive in a subtle way. Say the son does something that the mother doesn't like turns down an invitation to see her. She might casually mention that the son will be cut out of the will. She might say something like, if you don't need me, why do you need my stuff? But present it in a serious way, like a matter-of-fact way. She may give away one of the son's possessions that was left in her house, like if the son had toys or other property he left there when he moved out. She may give those away to somebody else, particularly.
No, I never had anything. I mean, I never got any of my stuff.
I know.
A couple of things from my dad, but like all of my main stuff that I remember that I had, I haven't seen in a long time. From either side.
I know we just got some pictures, but we'll never have the pictures that she has.
Nope, never. You know, there was Legos that I know. I mean, I was like a box of Legos, big old thing.
Yeah, see all that stuff.
That were my brothers, that were mine.
You should have gone to church then,
You know, and I don't have them anywhere. There was the Teddy Ruxpin I talked about, along
Right.
with the other thing. I haven't seen those in forever.
Yeah, it's like that'd be kind of nice to have.
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
If they had sentimental value, and she will deliberately mention it and act surprised if the son reacts negatively to that information. If the son has siblings, the mother will point out how they care for her and appreciate her much more than the son does. So she might say something like, "At least I did a good job of raising some of my children." Sign number 7, the mother is insecure. She predicts the son will abandon her. Now, this, of course, overlaps with borderline personality pathology. We see that symptom criterion for borderline, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. Here we see some efforts to avoid abandonment, but they're not frantic, they're not really desperate. So this fear of abandonment isn't quite as pronounced with vulnerable narcissism. We see the mother is particularly sensitive when the son talks about new friends or even hobbies that might take time away from her. Now, this overlaps with that other sign, but this is specifically around abandonment. So we see kind of a few things get activated. Another part of this insecurity, the mother looks to prevent loss, like she doesn't want to lose the affection of the son, the attention of the son. This is a key difference between vulnerable and grandiose narcissism. Grandiose narcissists want to make gains. They want to add to what they have. They're not really worried about losing what they have. A vulnerable narcissist is concerned with losing what they have. Sign number 8, she says she wants to...
Yes, that one is a big one for her. That is, she was always afraid to lose me and everything, she always was trying to hold on to it.
She always said she vocalized that? She'd
Yeah.
That? That's interesting. What'd she say? Like, oh, I don't want to, you don't need to move out, or...
Yeah, I mean, just never like, oh, why do you want to move away? Why?
Who's gonna take care of me? Who's
Yeah.
gonna talk to you? Who's my buddy gonna be, right?
Exactly.
Who means, like, who's gonna pick up your messes?
Exactly. That's like the whole thing.
My mother never vocalized that. It was there because she wanted to help her, but she never vocalized it. It was never said. But the control was there. You can
Yes.
tell. We talk about it all the time. So
Yeah, your mother just shut down on that.
But yeah, she was like, she wouldn't even tell me. She's like, fine, go then. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, she was a game player.
I know. Definitely.
close relationship with the son, but she contends that the son can't provide the emotional depth necessary to make that happen. He's just not trying hard enough. He doesn't love her enough, or he loves somebody else, and that's taken the place of the mother. So she blames the son for her own narcissistic tendencies. In addition, she has terrible listening skills. She's shallow and impressionistic. So when somebody's impressionistic, they talk about different things without putting detail in. This overlaps with histrionic personality disorder. Now, all these things taken together makes it really difficult for the son to spend time with her and develop that relationship. At some point, the son realizes there's a limit to how functional and meaningful that relationship can be, and he realizes that he's not at fault for that relationship being a disappointment to the mother. Moving to sign number 9. The mother is unhappy with her life. Now, we know that vulnerable narcissism is negatively correlated with life satisfaction. So the higher the level of narcissism, the lower the level of life satisfaction. The mother is not happy with herself as a person. She does not view herself as successful, but she gets angry with other people if they view her as...
Yes, my mother, I mean, I'd assume that she was never satisfied where she was.
Nope.
Never seemed it, at least.
Nope. I was talking about how she had to take this job or downgrade to this job or change departments because, I had to move over here and it was just too long of a commute. And then also when you moved up to, like, Isabella, to the valley, she ended up leaving a couple years later. Because it was more convenient, but it was done to her.
She couldn't stand driving the canyon anymore.
Right, and everything is always done to her.
Yep.
I can't pay for things. I'm living paycheck to paycheck because they're taking taxes out, and that was like 3 years in a row.
Exactly.
Like, they've garnished my wages. They're taking the taxes back because you couldn't manage that either.
No.
But it was always this whole like dissatisfaction. Oh, it's done to me. I'm not happy.
It was.
I have to move. Hey guys, I have to move. I have to get this job. I had to be transferred.
Yep, it was. It was very much so.
Have to do what you
Have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Not successful. This sense of being a failure is not something the mother admits. She promotes herself to others as being competent and wonderful, but internally, in her thoughts and her feelings, she views herself as a failure. She wants her son to affirm her worth, so she fishes for compliments. Now moving to sign number 10, this is the last sign of the mother with vulnerable narcissistic traits. This is low trust. The mother sees other people as threatening to her, and this can make her appear cold and distant. Other people are trying to take something from her, deceive her, make her look foolish. This is referred to as the hostile attribution bias,
Yeah.
and it has a strong association with vulnerable narcissism. This is when somebody has a tendency to look at ambiguous situations as hostile. So again, we see the mother is suspicious that people hate her, so she acts out in a condescending and arrogant way and antagonizes people. When those people act out against her because they've been antagonized, she says that she knew they were out to get her, right? So there's this vicious cycle
Yes.
that forms, and this can be maintained for a long time. She may want the son to intervene, to prove to her that he's on her side, to stop associating with people she views as enemies, and she may want the son to even confront these people for her. And this is a situation that can get really unpleasant and potentially dangerous really quickly. The mother may actually have a lot of power over the son. She is manipulating him to do what she wants done. And again, this can become a situation that's not good for anybody. So all these signs really stress the importance of boundaries. I touched on that before. The son at some point has to set healthy boundaries with the mother who has vulnerable narcissism. I know whenever I talk about topics like narcissism, there will be a variety of opinions. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate really interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found this description of narcissism to be interesting. Thanks for watching.
Today we're going to be looking at the impact of a son.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to cut this one short for today. This evening I'm going to come back on and we'll do part 2 of this, so please around 5 or 6 Pacific Standard Time I'm going to try to be on, and we'll try to do a little longer one and get this rolling. I hope to see you all there and do a live chat with everybody and get the ball rolling. I would.
Had any experience with any kind of narcissistic parents? They need to put it in comments.
Yes, please put it in the comments if you guys have any experiences with any of this too, and I would love to see you back at the live chat. Remember, that's, we'll say 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. So, namaste. Thank you everybody for watching, and really hope to see you guys this afternoon, evening. Have a wonderful day.